So with that fear of rejection, there's something that I also teach in my course, and that's to make a distinction between confidence and arrogance. And
Yes.
one of the things, there's something beautiful that I read once, and a couple of philosophers, I think, sort of share this, that all of our feelings, emotions can really come from one of two sources, love or fear. So if you think from that perspective, arrogance being really fear-based and about what are they going to think of me, and wanting to put your best foot forward and really being reliant on outside acknowledgement of you. Whereas confidence actually, in its truest sense, coming from a source of love, actually, an alignment with kind of divine inspiration in a sense. So you're allowing yourself just to channel that universal energy and the message that you have to share without even thinking about, oh gosh, what are they going to think about me? It's a completely different energy.
I'm Telana Simpson, and let's talk communication. My guest today is Naomi Estment. She is a personal branding photographer, videographer, speaker, and trader, and award-winning blogger. She's very passionate about helping visionary leaders shine on camera and become the stars of their brands. And she's a great example of what she teaches and helps others do. I really believe she shines as well. And today we're going to be learning from Naomi how to overcome the fear of rejection and really become much more confident. Naomi, thanks so much for giving of your time today. You teach women in particular how to be comfortable in front of the camera. Just tell us the story then of how you got to be doing this work today.
Yes, thank you, Telana. Thank you so much for the invitation to be chatting with you today. It's really an honor and a privilege. And I love the work that you're doing in the world. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And yes, as you say, in many of your podcasts too, confidence is such a fundamental thing in terms of living our lives successfully and enjoying our lives also. And also in terms of enjoying our photo and video shoots. So for me, it's been quite a long journey. It began 25 years ago when I married my husband, because he was actually already interested in photography and videography. So it really began there. And he actually had raced motorbikes professionally for 9 years before I'd even met him. So he was quite well known. He was actually recruited from there into financial services, being, a fairly top sports guy. And what happened is he began in front of the camera. So the top motorsport photographers were photographing him. So that was a few years before I met him. But then after we got married, he was doing testing for motorbike magazines, riding the motorbikes. And he really became friendly with some of the top motorsport photographers then. And they mentored him and guided him and taught him, got him on the road of doing photography. So he began with motorsport. And then around the same time, we started doing a lot of bush trips, self-drive safaris into Botswana, especially to Central Kalahari and the Okavango Delta.
Lovely.
And yeah, amazing experiences, really camping out with the lions and the ellies and the leopards walking through the camps and that sort of thing with no fences. And it was very remote. So we, at that stage, Dave already had a video camera, and we started just doing both because there were two of us, and I developed an interest in it too. And we share a big passion for wildlife. So we would film our trips, and that's where that began. And that's also where I first started learning about being on camera myself. So initially, it was so remote that there were really no other people generally, other than maybe another couple with us, but we would go off on our own to do our photography and our video. And so if we wanted any commentary, we would need to film each other. And at first I was so awkward on camera, I would absolutely cringe to see myself. But then I realized pretty quickly that you have to just be yourself. Otherwise you're not going to come across well. And that's really the absolute key. So from there, we were working in corporate at that stage, both of us for many years, and we developed our business alongside our corporate career. So naturally, our network was corporate and commercial photography and videography. But the turning point for me with regard to my real passion for photographing and filming women in particular began with my beautiful stepdaughter, Terry Lee, when she was 18. So that was around 2004. And I really wanted her to be affirmed in how beautiful she is. So I wanted her to have a gorgeous shoot. And I hadn't yet started photographing people. So I booked her a shoot at a nearby studio for, it was be a supermodel for a day package. And it was quite a big investment and quite an experience for Terry. But we had meantime just built our studio, not thinking about photographing in it, but actually because we needed more office space. And we got home from that shoot and we realized the photographer was lovely, but she wasn't that skilled at really helping Terry to relax and really be herself on camera. And we got home and we already had a set of studio lights that Dave had been using for something else. And we just hung up a white sheet in the studio, just like they had actually at this other studio, and just started playing. And so Terry was with us for a holiday for about 6 weeks. And we just had the best time just playing with everything. Hairstyles and makeup and clothing and backdrops and poses and you name it. And that was the starting point. So it was completely organic and I absolutely loved it from the second I started. And in fact, some of my favorite photos to this day are still from that first shoot with Terry Lee. And so then I was just hooked. So I did a whole lot of photography courses in mastering light and fashion and glamour and portraiture and developed our studio business from there. So that was, 15, 16 years ago. And then we still had our corporate and commercial business. We went full-time in that a couple of years back too. And around the end of 2015, I started getting more and more of a yearning to develop my own brand and to really, have that come through in my website and in my marketing, because our business brand is really quite masculine oriented. And my husband also does a lot of aerial photography and video with a drone, which is fantastic. But it's also the whole vibe is quite corporate and commercial and quite masculine. So then I also had more and more of a yearning to teach, to put into, actually I wanted to create a book. I did. All of the experience that I had of photographing and filming women and seeing them struggle with the same issues, and shoot after shoot. More than men. It's not that men don't feel camera shy. We've also photographed and filmed many, many men, particularly in the corporate space, whole executive teams and that. Yeah. And the difference is that women are so much more invested in how we look and how we come across and in the outcome. So if I do a shoot for a woman exec, for example, she would be, to have a look on the camera and to see. So in studio, we actually work with a big screen. We have the camera connected to the screen and you can straight away see everything that's coming up and select your photos in the shoot. If I'm on location, then I'll show them on the camera. So women will be like, oh gosh, that's nice. Wow. Maybe can I just change my hair? Maybe I should, can I pose a bit differently? Maybe my jacket, and they'll really get into it. And then they'll be like, oh, when am I going to get my photos, afterwards? And they just can't wait to get them out there and share them. Men will be like, oh gosh, I look great. Fantastic. Okay, I'm off to my meeting. End of story. So, apart from the fact that we've got a lot more scope in terms of preparing, in terms of clothing and, makeup and hair and just in general, the way that we approach things is a lot more detail oriented. And women in general also struggle more with their looks and the way they look. So there's actually a phenomenal statistic, I don't know if you're familiar with it, from one of the Dove surveys, The Real Truth About Beauty, revisited, I think it was in 2011, that 4% of women worldwide consider themselves beautiful. 4%. Yeah. And when I read that was actually a real kicker for me to start this confidence on camera coaching. And it was, so I'd already been photographing women for a long time. So it was around 2015. And I was actually paging through a magazine. I think it was A Woman in Home. And I literally came across this one page, which was just a completely blank white space with a little bar of soap in the middle. And that writing, 4% of women worldwide consider themselves beautiful. And it just hit me in the heart like a freight train, because I had never considered myself beautiful, because I grew up with a severe squint. I still have it in my right eye. You won't see it now because I wear contact lenses and I've learned to control it since I've been an adult. But growing up, I had no control over it. So literally my two options for interacting with the world from the age of 2, when that began, until I was 18 and finally able to get contact lenses was really to look freaky with my squint. And it's really severe enough that you wouldn't know where I'm looking if you saw it, or to wear these ugly glasses, because back in the 60s and 70s, there was no such thing as fashion eyewear for kids. And it was actually accentuated by the fact that I'm an identical twin. And the only real difference between us is that my sister has perfect eyes. So I was often known as the twin who wore glasses, because we're very identical apart from that. So it was a real struggle for me from an identity point of view. And I hated it. So I literally didn't keep a single photo of myself from before I turned 25. And that was when I met my husband. And he really helped me to accept my squint. In fact, he says he loves my squint. He thinks it makes me more human and more lovable. And interestingly, that's been the journey for me. When I finally was able to accept it myself and stop trying so desperately to hide it out of fear of rejection, clearly, it was amazing to discover how many other people all have their own issues. And it's those flaws, those human points within us that really can connect us with each other. So it's like Brené Brown talks about vulnerability. Once you're able to get to that point where you can share something vulnerable, it's a true point of connection. So that was the kicker for me. When I saw that advert, I was like, this needs to change, and it can change, and let's do something about it. So I decided to write a book. I've actually written a novel back in the day as well. And I've done many, many blog posts. I actually really enjoy writing too. So that was my kind of go-to thinking. I'll write a book, which I then did. I came across an incredible online, it was a webinar called Bestseller in a Weekend by someone called Alicia Dunhams. Phenomenal if you or any of your listeners are wanting to compile, many years of experience into a book form, or even a course form, and I'll tell you why. So what she said is to brainstorm a title and a subtitle for your book, and then 6 or 7 sections and 20 questions within each section that, my clients had typically asked me and come up with and struggled with over the years. So that's what I did. And it was literally took about 2 hours maybe to come up with all the questions, maybe not even that long. And then my assistant at the time, she and I sat together in like an interview setup, and my husband set up the cameras and we filmed it over about 8 hours. So we did about 4 sessions of 2 hours each. And she just asked me the questions, and she'd had her own makeup business as well. And she really understood, she was, the right age bracket, and she really understood our clientele, particularly from a woman's perspective. So she could give a bit of input too. And we literally just had conversations and answered all of these questions. And then she transcribed the audio from those videos into the first 57,000 word draft of my book, which I ended up calling Rock That Lens. So how do you shine on camera and become the star of your brand, as a subtitle. And then I spent time editing it, and then also tested that content in live workshops with people, with groups of women, typically from about 6 up to about 25. And that was really fun, just to get feedback, and obviously introducing exercises, and then bringing in some wonderful inspiration from mentors and client stories, my stories, and getting permissions from all of those people. Long story short, I then submitted that to Penguin Random House, and their business editor really liked it. And she was very keen. She asked me for the full manuscript, commissioned a reader review, and then pitched it to their concept committee, who said it's such visual content that actually they feel it belongs online rather than in a printed book. So I was hugely gutted initially. Sure. And then I thought, well, actually, they're right. And in the meantime, I had been very blessed to win a scholarship to Marie Forleo's online B School, which is phenomenal, looking for online business training. And she's amazing. And so that was thanks to a video. And so with that inspiration, I thought, okay, let's do this. Let's create the online courses. So I literally then took the manuscript and reversed it back into scripts for all of my online course videos, and then added all the downloadable PDF docs with exercises that go with it, and created all of that. So in the process, so that was 2016, in the process I launched my business, which is simply Naomi Estment Peter Unlimited, with all of my much more feminine-oriented branding and really my heart space. So I love to especially help women who are the face of their brand. So particularly if you're a coach or a consultant or a practitioner and you need to put yourself out there, you know what you want to say. You know, typically you are really quite accomplished in your life. And many of my clients have been in corporate and developing their own businesses or starting their own businesses. And then it becomes a challenge of, oh gosh, now I have to put myself out there. I've got to go and represent myself. And that's a scary place sometimes
it's
from
a
a
big fear.
company.
Yeah.
Yeah, particularly for women. And especially when you're starting out. So that's really where the sort of trajectory of how things worked. And we still have our corporate and commercial business that I'm involved in with my husband, but my real passion is on the side of particularly helping women to really shine on camera and put their message out there in a bigger way, because the camera is such a gift to help us do that.
Yeah. And as we said, though, we both acknowledge there is such a fear of being seen, actually putting yourself out there.
Hugely.
Yeah,
I think it's also all related to the whole modesty thing, that we have as women. The whole thing of not wanting to be loud, not wanting to be even noticed that much, not wanting to be too noisy, and certainly not vain. But what we do is we create a disservice to ourselves and to everybody else who we can serve in the process by getting that message out there.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to delve a bit more into that concept of shining, because it's aspiration also close to my heart, is to try and help people shine in their unique way. I always say it doesn't mean you loud and the center of attention. It's just that you are allowing yourself to be present in this world. So what do you mean by shining, and specifically on camera?
Yes, so that's exactly it. You absolutely nailed it, Telana. It's all about being yourself, giving yourself permission and allowing yourself to be yourself. There's a beautiful Chinese proverb that goes, tension is who you think you should be, but relaxation is who you are. And that's the whole difference, especially on camera. When you're trying to be something and you're trying to convey something, you can really trip yourself up in terms of starting to feel awkward and come across awkwardly. So there's so many different tools and techniques that I share, obviously, in my courses, but obviously it'll take too long. There are a couple of different things. The very first thing is to think about your viewer. So the person who's going to see your photos or watch your videos, and make it all about them. The thing is that if you can keep in mind I call it the $1 million question, which is, how do I want to make them feel? It shifts all of the focus off you and, oh, what are they going to think of me and whatever. Just forget about yourself. It's about that person. Because the whole reason we're showing up on camera is for them, to be able to share something with them. So if you can think of one specific person and how you can help them immediately with your message. And like you say, it's not about comparing yourself, especially not with your highest level mentors like the Marie Forleos of the world. It's not fair to compare yourself with those, incredibly accomplished leaders, particularly online and on video. So it's really about exactly what you said, finding your own authentic space and being able to express that. In terms of the shining, I call it sparkle. I'll often say to my clients, sparkle for me. And science tells us that our minds can only hold one thought at a time. And so you can choose that thought. You have that power. The camera actually holds no power. All it does is record what you give it. So if you even just think the word sparkle, you can physically imagine sparkle into your own eyes as you're doing that. And that has to come from you. We, as professional photographers and videographers, it's our job to capture that, but we can't manufacture it. We can't put it there, not even in post-production. It's got to come from you. And another thing to remember is that we all have it. Every single one of us can shine on camera. And that's something that was really a game changer for me, because growing up not feeling beautiful, I finally, after filming and photographing all these women and really seeing the beauty and the sparkle in everyone, that uniqueness and that beauty, I finally realized I can't say legitimately everyone's beautiful on camera except for me. It just doesn't work that way. That's just hypocritical. We all can. And once we can really internalize that, we can free ourselves up to actually let it radiate. So there's another beautiful quote that I just love from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it says, he says, pretty is something you're born with, but beautiful, that's an equal opportunity adjective. And it's the absolute truth in every experience I've ever had of photographing anybody. And I'm talking in particularly for women, because we trip ourselves up so much with this issue of worrying about how we look and not feeling beautiful. But we all do, and we all can. So I would say start with that in mind, with the thought in mind of how you want to make your viewer feel, and then infuse that feeling into your own expression when you're talking to them on camera and sharing what you want to share with them on camera.
Yeah, so it's very much as I say, turning the spotlight off you onto the topic or the message, the other person.
Yes, the topic and the message, and very specifically the other person.
The other person, yeah.
So the thing with video, photos as well, depending on who your photographer is and how much they help you. But it's different from speaking to a group, public speaking, because you get so much feedback then from your people, and you can feed off their energy in a sense, but you don't get that from video. So when we're filming people and photographing them, I'm constantly interacting and giving energy and feeding that to help people, raise that vibe. But if you don't have someone doing that for you, it's quite tricky. So you need to bring that yourself. So the best way to do it is, as you say, focus on your message, but even more than that, actually physically imagine that you're looking through that lens at one specific person. Imagine them. Think of somebody who who you have perhaps helped already, or who you can help. For me, quite often, I would think of my stepdaughter, actually, and also my niece, who's even 10 years younger. So she's only 21 now. So, and I get such a sense of warmth and love when I think about them. And I know that there are things that I can teach them, even though, they're that much younger. In fact, Terry Lee has been, my stepdaughter has been an amazing, it's been a journey, my whole course of my photography and video, where I started out shooting modeling portfolios when she was 18. So I photographed a lot of young women, girls who were around 18 to 21, 22, and then kind of progressed. So she's now got her own interior decorating business. And as she became an entrepreneur, so I started photographing and filming more entrepreneurs. But so it kind of was aligned. And when you can think of someone like that, so you're really careful and you know that you can give them some advice. You only need to be 2-3 steps ahead of someone to really be able to help them. To be able to focus in on them and speak to them through that lens. So often what happens with video in particular is that we get very overwhelmed almost by the need to sell. So one of my beautiful friends and clients recently was sharing this with me. She's taking her art classes online. And she was saying she gets so nervous on the camera. And so she was shooting an intro video to explain her art classes. And she's very new to video as well. So she was thinking about this and getting really nervous. And I said to her, okay, can you think of one client who you've got who would love this course and can really learn from, she was explaining some paint techniques and what have you. And she was like, oh, instantly she thought and told me her name. And straight away, the whole vibe of your energy changes if you just talk to that person. Because remember that each person is only going to watch by themselves. It's going to be one person watching you. So you want that one-to-one connection. You're not actually as soon as you start thinking on video of speaking one to many, you start getting into more of a sales mode and getting confused about how you feel about your message. So that's really important, I feel, to just think of one person and give them your full attention and expression.
So this is interesting because we are then so focused on the other person, as you say, that one person to help them. But it's like a fine line between that and then over-focused. And I think the difference is you helping them versus them judging you, because it then relates to that fear of rejection.
Yes, absolutely. And so with that fear of rejection, there's something that I also teach in my course, and that's to make a distinction between confidence and arrogance. And
Yes.
one of the things, there's something beautiful that I read once, and a couple of philosophers, I think, sort of share this, that all of our feelings, emotions can really, really come from one of two sources, love or fear. So if you think from that perspective, arrogance being really fear-based and about what are they going to think of me, and wanting to put your best foot forward and really being reliant on outside acknowledgement of you. Whereas confidence, actually, in its truest sense, coming from a source of love, actually, an alignment with kind of divine inspiration, in a sense. So you're allowing yourself just to channel that universal energy and the message that you have to share without even thinking about, oh gosh, what are they going to think about me? It's a completely different energy. If you think, even, for example, from your podcast, let's say you were doing a little 90-second video to promote your podcast. So, and this is completely natural for all of us. So your mind would quite possibly start with a story of, okay, why am I doing this? So I want more people to watch my podcast. So, gosh, and then I would really like to have so-and-so and so-and-so as guests, because they're just amazing. And that could also really expand it and get my message out in a bigger way. So I need to impress them. And, you know, you can actually almost get breathless thinking about it if you think about it in that way. Whereas by contrast, what you could do instead is think, okay, who's one of my friends or my family member or a client or a sister or a daughter who could really learn something, or maybe has really learned something from conversations that count. And just go back to your why of creating the podcast and really just share that message. So speaking to the point of, here's what happens on the podcast, and these are some examples of amazing transformations. Here's a story, tell a story, and just share it in that way, so that you are really just being yourself, as opposed to having any sort of exterior concern about how you're being perceived, which is totally natural though. I mean, as we know, we all have fear of rejection. We wouldn't be normal if we didn't. And it obviously, you know, many times people talk about this, that it stems from the, you know, being part of the tribe. And back in the day, it could have cost you your life if you were not accepted. So it was a serious issue. And there's a part of us that still feels that until we manage to work our way through that. I mean, it happens in all aspects. I think about blogging. So I've done a ton of blogging over like 11 years. And the very first time I pressed publish on that first blog post, my finger was trembling. And straight afterwards, I wanted to delete it, you know, because like, oh, how will it be received? And the first time I shared a video on Facebook talking about my squint, which I didn't want anybody to know about. It was like really the thing that I wanted to hide more than anything. And the first time I shared a video about it, I was explaining what I explained to you earlier. So why I'm so passionate about my work. And again, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'll press publish. But then what happens is, once you start realizing, oh, it's actually, wow, people actually like what you have to say. And the more you do it, the more you realize you have something of value to say. And then the whole shift happens and it becomes, how can I reach more people with my message? Maybe I should learn some SEO and get more people to find my blog. Whereas in the beginning, it was like, if one person reads this, that's going to be trauma, you know? But you can't get there without starting from somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's the same with being on camera, you know, with your photos and your videos. And the awesome thing now is that everything's digital, so you can just delete and repeat. So you've got that opportunity to just practice like we couldn't back in the day. It was too expensive to take a whole bunch of photos. And as for video, well, that wasn't even an option. So now we can just do that and practice it, which is like the biggest gift and the best way to get comfortable, especially also on video, because so many of us, we don't hear ourselves the way that other people hear us.
Yeah.
And it sounds so awkward to us when we first listen and see ourselves on video. But that's it. Literally, obviously there are many skills that you can learn, but the practicing is one of the key things to just get yourself into that rhythm. I had a funny experience coming back from one of our first bush trips back in the day, and we'd filmed ourselves, and Dave was editing the video in his office, and I walked past the office and I heard my sister speaking, my twin, and I said to Dave, "What's Ruth doing here?" And it was me. It was my own voice that I was hearing on video. And I felt so sheepish, but that's how different we sound. We don't sound like ourselves. So that's one of the things that, like with my clients, when they start getting used to being on camera, it's like, oh, and then when they first can start enjoying how they look in photos and videos, it's just the most amazing transformation.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you also then, because you've had so much experience with photography, videography, and that. Communication is really important to me. It's about how do we get information across so that the other person can understand us, but also how do we receive information to try and understand the other person. Is there anything from your world of taking photos and videos that you could share with us, like some tips around how to communicate better, to be better communicators?
Yeah, so specifically what we've covered in terms of being on screen is that thing of thinking about that one person. So particularly with video, I'm a big fan of scripting, not necessarily start to finish. And you could use notes, depends on you. You can actually very successfully use a teleprompter, script your whole video, especially if you've got a very short video to share. So like my 90-second entry video for B-School, when I actually started creating that, it was 11 minutes long. I did a draft version, and I was like, wow, how am I going to get this across in 90 seconds? And it was the only way I could do it really effectively was through scripting. And I used a teleprompter for that. But you don't have to use a teleprompter. But when you script and you put your thoughts together, you'll find that you can put things across so much more concisely and with much greater impact than you would just when you naturally speak, because nearly all of us will use more words than necessary when we speak. And we'll also interrupt ourselves, especially if you've got a quick mind. You'll think of something else and that'll happen. And it can make your video really long and not as nearly as interesting to watch. So the first thing is to really understand your audience. And there's so much in B-School, actually, Marie does beautiful branding exercises to really get to the heart of who is the person that you're speaking to and what is the message that you're wanting to convey before you actually start. The same with any personal branding photo shoot and or video shoot. I'll encourage people to, from one perspective, get in touch with what they feel and what they want. So by, for example, looking for other examples of photo shoots that speak to them, that inspire them. So maybe on Pinterest, for example, and that can be super effective to help you realize what you really resonate with. And it might be a lifestyle shoot, in a home, or it might be a shoot in a garden. I did a beautiful series of shoots actually for Nia Null, the singer. And one of the things she found was photographs of a mom with her children blowing bubbles in a park. And we landed up doing that. And we wouldn't have thought of that if she hadn't, looked for examples. So that's one way to help you get in touch, first of all, with what really resonates with you. So back to what you said about finding your unique essence and how you want to convey that, and then really getting down to who is your ideal client if it's a business scenario, or who are the people that you really want your photos and your videos to resonate with? What are the types of, are they looking for you to inspire them, or maybe challenge them if you're a coach, or maybe just understand them, in a beautiful, peaceful context, that maybe care is what they're looking for. Or maybe they're looking for fun and like funkiness. Marie's got like amazing fun and funkiness and music that she brings in. So it's about bringing your whole personality to the party. Same as with your social media. You don't just want to be the professional figure. You want to be the human being and bring that in, whatever your special interests in that are. Maybe it's your dogs, maybe you want them in your pics. I've actually had quite recently as well, actually, a couple of my clients, some of their favorite photos are when my dogs wander into the shot and I give them a little kiss on the nose or what have you. And in fact, talking about the fear of rejection and the sparkling on camera, quite often the photos that they love the most, my clients, are the spontaneous shots, the shots between the shots that just happen instinctively. They might even be looking away. And that's just an indicator of that's the zone you want to get into. That's that part of you where you're just being yourself and having fun. And the more you can practice that before you're on camera, the more quickly you'll get into it when you're in a photo shoot or a video shoot setting. So really the communication side, there's so much about communication. Especially having been in a long-term relationship, you learn a lot. And being in business together, you learn a lot. But bottom line is it's about understanding yourself and understanding who you're communicating with, and then aligning that as best you can.
And then I wanted to ask you on that more personal note as well. It's around some conversations that count, because that's, for me, things really only change for the better when we have those important conversations, and they're usually the most difficult ones because there's so much importance in them. They can, lead to something, and if we have them effectively, it usually leads to really good outcomes. So I wanted to ask if there was a time recently, when was the last time you had a conversation that counts? And if you could just share a bit about it and what worked for you, or how did it go?
Okay, I've actually got a juicy example for you. That's quite funny. So I'm very blessed. Partly being in entrepreneurship, I feel that entrepreneurship in a way is like a what's the word? Like a pressure cooker for life experience and life skills training.
Yes.
And especially also if you work with your partner. So Dave and I have been working together for 25 years, and we're extremely different in some ways, but very complementary for that reason. But it can also create conflicts. And actually, interestingly, we don't argue about a lot of things, and we didn't have a lot of conflict in our life until we started doing shoots and things together. And that's one of the points where we have a lot of contention, because we both see things very specifically, creatively, and it matters to us to get our view across, but it's not always the same. And when we can work it out, it becomes very complementary. And similarly with my women friends, I've got an amazing group of women friends, entrepreneurs. So in terms of meaningful conversations, we have so many around the topic of, what we're doing with our businesses, what we want to achieve, the transformations we want to help people gain. So it's really meaningful stuff about purpose, life purpose and business purpose. But what happened recently, and what you say now is so true, with regard to how triggers can happen. And this particular conversation happened recently, about a week ago. And Dave and I we just got up and we're getting ready to go to a shoot for a client. And so I was just sitting down at the dressing table to dry my hair, and he was sitting on the bed putting on his shoes, and he got a message on his phone. Before I tell you the story, I just want to give you a little bit of context. So in our business, the whole scenario of doing stuff for free is a loaded emotional topic, or has been in the past particularly. So in the beginning, so when I started the studio 16 years ago, or what have you, I used to do quite a lot of free shoots. In some ways, it had merit because I was building up my portfolio and I was learning my skills and what have you. But I did struggle initially to start charging my worth. And it took me quite a long time. And I think that's extremely common among women in particular, especially when we start out. It's a challenging thing to get past. So Dave didn't have that in the beginning. But then, when was it? 2011, 2013, 2014. He'd actually done really well in property, and he was in financial services before. And we had a little gap where we were able to dedicate ourselves entirely to conservation projects. And the concept was we were going to have our expenses covered. That was the idea, but it never happened. So long story short, we fully dedicated ourselves to the photography and video side of a whole series of quite epic conservation projects. And it cost us a huge amount of money, our life savings essentially. So this whole thing of doing work for free actually has had its challenges in the past because we're both quite philanthropic by nature. So what happened, we then developed beyond that. And, for the last couple of years, we've been working full time. And it was, in fact, incredibly refreshing to move out of the philanthropic space into doing shoots and just being paid for the shoots and really, being paid your value for what you're doing. Huge lesson in that. So we're sitting there now last week. And so Dave is sitting on the bed and he gets a message on his phone. And he says to me across the room, without looking up and without me, looking at him, I'm still doing my hair. He says, how would you like to do a free couple shoot for a young couple that can't afford it? And so has asked us if we'll do it. So my hair stood up on the back of my neck. And my first thought was, so this friend of ours who he says asked us to do it is a lovely person. Not a close friend. We don't see each other often, but she's lovely. We've both known her for years. And so I immediately got this conflicted emotion because I feel that it's hugely disrespectful for people to ask us to do stuff for free. I would never do that to someone else. I understand that it sometimes happens with people who just do not understand what's involved in photography and video. But when something is the way you earn a living, you might as well say, oh, won't you just give me a couple of grand, just because you can and I'm asking you to. That's the sort of vibe. So my shackles are up, boy. So I say to Dave, why? Who are they? What's important about them? Because now if I'm going to be doing free shoots, I've got a whole huge family and loads of friends that also could be getting free shoots. And I've got clients that I hugely respect who are paying me for my time and my expertise. So, there's a respect thing for them as well. So Dave then goes, something like, I hate your tone of voice, forget it, I'll do it myself. And off he goes out of the room to go and make coffee. So I'm seething now, but I'm conflict avoidant. I'm actually a 9 on the Enneagram, if you know the Enneagram. Don't know if you know that. So the 9 is the peacemaker. Okay, so harmony is a very high value for me. I don't like conflict at all. So my general way of behaving is, if I get into a situation like this, I'll step back and then I'll wait for the emotion to subside. I'll think about it and then I'll approach resolving it, once we can actually do it without getting all emotional. But now we're under a bit of pressure because we're on our way to a client, like shortly. So we need to resolve this quickly because the last thing that I want is to be in a state of conflict at a client. That's just not on. It's really important to me that we in good relation, me and Dave, and we're working together and, we need to be in a positive space and happy and together. So I finished drying my hair, calmed down enough to go and speak to him. And I go into the kitchen where he's making coffee and I say to him, babe, can we just be friends and just get on the same page about this? So he goes, we are friends, I've forgotten about it already. So I'm like, that's not good enough for me. Because there's still this thing. So anyway, I say to him, I was actually thinking about us. I wasn't trying to fight with you. I was thinking about us and our business and all the blood, sweat and tears we put into it and our clients. And it's about respect for, what we do. And so he goes, maybe I should just show you the SMS. So I go, yeah, show me. So he shows me. So immediately I see It's a beautiful message from this friend of ours, beautifully written. She hasn't asked us to do the shoot for free. She said, what would you charge for a couple shoot for this young couple that she knows that they're really struggling below the breadline, but it would be such a special thing for them to have a few photos, whatever. How do we feel about it? What would we charge? And if we don't want to, she totally understands. I mean, like the most beautiful message. So instantly I'm on the same page with Dave. I'm like, of course, let's do a few photos for them. You know what I mean? And he's like, oh, well, I should have just showed you this in the first place. So it was just such a moment to notice how easily we can miscommunicate on things. I think, especially when Mercury is in retrograde, apparently, according to the astrologists, which was happening. I'm not sure how much, I don't know a lot about that, but anyway, it can happen, that sort of conflict. So one of the things that has really helped us in our relationship, and me particularly, because I love this kind of thing, is to use tools that give personality assessments like the Enneagram, and for both of us to do that and then see about each other, see what it is that drives us and how we approach things in different ways. And it's been hugely eye-opening in a number of different ways. So the thing is, fundamentally, I really believe, we all have very similar human needs and desires. We all want to be loved. We all want to be accepted. We want to be respected. We want our freedom. We want our dignity. We want to have lives of meaning. But we approach things in different ways, and we have different priorities, and our personalities are not the same. And especially when you've been in a relationship for a long time, you can quite easily almost fall into the trap of thinking the other person thinks like you think, but they don't necessarily. So we've done 3 different things over the years that have been really insightful. The one was the Enneagram. The other one was the Gallup Strengths Finder test. So it's also the sort of multiple choice questionnaires that you can each do, and then you get your sort of reading on it. And the other one is the Sparky type quiz, which is phenomenal, completely free actually. Well, each of them you can go into deeper levels. So, but an example of what happened, actually it was on the Gallup Strengths Finder test. We did that also with some people who were working, 2 people that were working with us at the time. And the dynamic, I suddenly understood how I frustrate Dave so badly. And one of the things was that my top strength is strategic thinking. So that means that I tend to think of every possible consideration and repercussion before I take a decision. I'll think of all the different things that can happen. Dave, on the other hand, is an action taker. So he's almost ready, fire, aim, So there, he would get very frustrated with me if we were looking at taking a decision on something, and I'd be holding back. I'd be like, but what about this? What about that? And he'd be like, don't be so negative, just do the thing. Whereas when we understand each other's manner of being, for all of us, pretty much, our greatest strength can also be our greatest weakness. So with me, the strategic thinking can actually hold me up and paralyze me a bit in terms of decision making if I end up thinking too much about it. Dave, on the other hand, could also benefit from thinking a little bit more before making certain decisions. So if we can then respect each other's differences and go, hey, that's a strength in you, that's a strength in me, let's come together in the middle, it can really help us both with a better outcome. So that's just one example of ways that we can understand each other better and be more compassionate towards each other and also towards ourselves when we start realizing why we react in certain ways to certain things because of what's important to us, and then really coming into more of an understanding of how we can communicate better.
Thank you. That's a lovely example. So what I'm hearing is the key thing is that understanding of ourself and other, the self-awareness, and also understanding other styles and then learning to work with them. But what's interesting also in your examples, after you've done your hair and you went back to him, what I heard and what they teach about is getting on the same intention, reminding the other person that, listen, we're friends. I'm on your side here. I'm not against you. That higher intention.
Yes. Telana,
kind of diffuses the situation. Then you can find a way to talk about it.
Yes, I love the way that you expressed that. Thank you. And what it makes me think of, one of the keys, so we've been married for 25 years, and I would say one of the absolute keys to the joy in our relationship and being able to work through conflict is, as you say, just knowing beyond any shadow of a doubt that we actually have each other's best interest at heart.
Yeah.
Always. So even when we have the conflict, we still know it's not because we're trying to fight with each other, even though in the moment you get frustrated and you get cross, but then you remember, actually, we are exactly what you're saying. We have the high intention. We've always had that. And it's a beautiful base to come from.
Mm. Great. So I just want to pick up again. You spoke then about charging your worth. And it's so important. I don't know if we could just take 2 minutes how did you get over that? Because that is, it's so difficult for people to say, this is what I'm worth. And
Telana, so actually that's one of the best reasons to become confident on camera and to really develop a beautiful portfolio of photos and videos of yourself. That's one of the best benefits you can derive from it. Because what happens is, once you start seeing yourself in a more positive light and other people start responding to you in a more positive way, it can change everything about your relationship with yourself and with other people, starting with your significant other and your friends, your family, your clients, your prospects. It literally changes the way that you are perceived, first internally and then externally. And what that also helps you do straight away is to position your brand as premium and to start charging your worth. And really believing it, first of all, because you see it manifest, and then also to it's the whole premium expression of what you do and what you offer. So that's another one of the big drivers for me, to help women to develop that confidence on camera and step into their own power, actually, through developing the relationship with the camera. In fact, I wrote a novel. It was what actually started my whole online thing back. I finished it in 2009. And it's a coming of age story. It's not published yet, and I'm glad. I'll tell you why. Because it's a coming of age story of a young woman who's about 25. And it's a love story too, but it's really about her coming into her own power as a woman and really developing confidence in who she is and her own everything to do with what she believes and what she stands for. So I'm glad that I didn't publish the novel yet, because what I want to do is just tweak it to share that message, that to allow her to step into her own power through the medium and the metaphor of becoming confident on camera and becoming empowered through learning how to share herself and her message in a fully authentic, beautiful way. Just like you said at the beginning, because it really is about being authentic and not about being distracted by competition and what everyone else is doing. It's really about coming back to, who am I? How can I help? Who can I help? And what's the best way for me to do that? So very, very empowering. And particularly from a charging your worth perspective. But there's so many other things. And I mentioned quite a few in my course, because it's really a journey. It's not something that you suddenly can do. You can fairly suddenly learn a lot of techniques to come across better. So you can improve your perception of yourself very quickly. You can do that, but the real transformation is more of an inside job, or it's a combination of inside and outside. Because in the process and sort of in the journey, you realize, like I mentioned with blogging, you realize more and more and more how much you have to give as you give, and that it's really an infinite supply, and that it's coming from inspiration from a source greater than you, actually. And once you can tap into that, then you can fly.
And sparkle on the way.
And sparkle on the way, yes.
So how can people get hold of you? They want to contact.
Thanks, Telana. So my website is very simply naomiestment.com. And I've got contact details there and all the different ways people can work with me. I'm based in Joburg, so I do photo and video shoots here. And then my online courses you can link to from my website, or otherwise simply go to courses.naomiestment.com. And I've got a free course as an intro, which
Yes.
which
to
is
ask
just
you about that gift. Yeah.
available. Yeah. So if anybody would like to do that, it's literally pulled 7 little 3-minute videos out of my main course. And it just gives you a taste of how to shine on camera and become the star of your brand, with some exercises associated so that you can get a couple of quick wins. If anybody does do the course, I would highly recommend doing the exercises too. Just get your feet wet and give it a go, because that's really where the transformation is going to come in.
Yeah, it's always from the action.
Available.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I did that course,
so
and it was very useful. So I'm definitely going to recommend it to people, because just to get there was posing techniques, that I hadn't thought of, and I really enjoyed your message in it, and it shows your brand as well, as you're saying. You can see that what you are what you are talking about. You demonstrate it.
Thank you.
And it's a great gift. I'll have the link in the show notes for anyone that wants to do that. It's called Rock That Lens Intro.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Telana.
Cool. And then just to end off, I always end up asking this question of people, like, what is the conversation that you believe we need to be having more of today that would make the world a better place?
I think, like we said just now, learning to understand ourselves and understand each other better, so that we don't talk past each other. So that we really understand where our own motivation's coming from and where the other person's motivation's coming from, and to be able to meet in the middle with compassion. Compassion is absolutely key. And I think that would make the world a better place. And I love that you ask that and that you focus on that. It's a beautiful message, and it's much needed, Telana. So good for you for that.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Yeah. I'm Telana Simpson, and this has been Let's Talk Communication. To find out more about my show and my guest today, Naomi Estment, please go to the website, which is innercoaching.co.za/talk communication. You can also find the show on YouTube and iTunes and Google Podcast and even Stitcher. But otherwise, I really hope you go out and have conversations that count in your life, and find your way of accessing your little sparkle, your shine, and sharing that with the world. Thank you for listening.